At dinner with my family, my fiancée leaned over and whispered, "Your mom's accent is so cringe. How do you even put up with it?" I didn't react. I just finished my meal, thanked my mom, and went to sleep. The next morning, she walked into the kitchen and found her engagement ring sitting on my mom's table, right where the insult happened. My mom has lived in this country for 40 years, but she's never lost her accent. It's thick, a little musical, the sound of my entire childhood. The sound of her telling bedtime stories, teaching me how to cook, cheering for me at soccer games. To me, that accent is home. To my fiancé, apparently, it was something to be ashamed of. The end came, as these things often do, over a meal. It was Sunday dinner at my parents' house, a tradition we'd kept for as long as I can remember. Brooke had been coming for the 2 years we were together. My parents adored her, or at least I thought they did. They welcomed her like family. My mom especially treated her like the daughter she never had. That night, my mom was telling one of her long, funny stories about her first job in America when she misunderstood an order and accidentally sold a customer a broom instead of a loaf of bread. Her accent always gets stronger when she's excited, and she was in full storytelling mode. We were all laughing, or I thought we were. Then I glanced over at Brooke. She wasn't laughing. She was staring down at her plate, a stiff, pained smile on her face. Later, while my dad cleared the table and my mom went to get dessert, Brooke leaned toward me. We were sitting at the old oak table my grandfather built, the one I'd eaten at my entire life. She whispered, and she sounded like a total snob. "Your mom's accent is so embarrassing. How do you even handle it?" I didn't react. I didn't say a word. I just felt this deep, hollow stillness settle over me, like a bell had been struck in a quiet room, and the vibration revealed the emptiness in everything I thought we had. There had been signs, small ones. The silence my mom would call, the eye roll when my dad told one of his old country jokes. I had written it off as stress, long days at her job in a high-end art gallery. But it wasn't stress. It was shame. She was ashamed of my family. Of me. Why Mom came back with cheesecake, Brooke's favorite, homemade of course. Brooke took a slice, smiled sweetly, and said how delicious it was, her voice thick with fake warmth. I watched her perform, realizing I was seeing her clearly for the first time. After dinner, I stood up, hugged my mom, thanked her for the meal, told her I loved her, and said I was tired. Brooke followed me out, waving goodbye like nothing had happened. The drive home was silent. I could feel her looking at me, waiting for me to start an argument or apologize. I did neither. When we got home, I said I was tired and went to bed. I didn't kiss her goodnight. I just lay there in the dark, back turned, and made a decision. The next morning before dawn, I got up quietly. I dressed, walked into the living room, and picked up the engagement ring from the little dish on the mantel, the one Brooke took off before sleeping. It was a beautiful vintage piece I'd spent months searching for that I drove to my parents' house. The streets were empty. I used my old key to let myself in. The house was dark and still. I walked to the dining room and set the ring down on the oak table, the exact spot where she had leaned over and insulted my mother. Then I left and went back to the apartment to wait. When Brooke came into the kitchen around 8, she looked refreshed. "Good morning," she said, like nothing had changed. "Are you still in a mood?" "I'm not in a mood," I said. "I dropped your ring off at my mom's house." She froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "What are you talking about? Why would you do that?" "I left it on the dining room table," I said, "right where you insulted my mom and everything she is. You can pick it up on your way out." "We're done, Brooke." Her confusion turned to anger. "You're breaking up with me over a whisper?" "I was just being honest. It is embarrassing." "No," I said quietly, though my calm felt sharp enough to cut. "You weren't being honest. You were being cruel. You sat in her home, ate the food she made for you, and mocked the voice that taught me my first words. That's not honesty. That's arrogance. And I'm not going to build a life with someone who disrespects the people I love." She didn't cry. She yelled, called me a mama's boy, said I was overreacting, throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me. I just stood there and let her get out. When she ran out of things to say, she finally muttered, "Fine, I'll be out by the end of the week." I thought that would be it. I was wrong. The first escalation was money. Our wedding was 6 months away, and we'd already put down deposits, most of them from my savings. The biggest was the venue, a trendy, high-end event space Brooke had insisted on. The deposit was $20,000, non-refundable. A few days after she moved out, I called the venue to cancel. I explained the breakup and asked if there was any chance of a partial refund. The event's manager, all corporate polish and fake sympathy, told me, "I'm sorry, sir, but the contract is ironclad. The deposit is non-refundable for any reason." Something in her tone felt off. So I did some digging. Turned out the venue was owned by a holding company. After a few hours of digging through public records, I finally found a connection. On the board of the company that owned the venue sat none other than Brooke's uncle, Richard, a wealthy property developer and majority shareholder. Suddenly, everything made sense. She hadn't chosen that venue because she loved it. She'd chosen it because it would funnel our wedding money straight into her family's pockets. And now, they had no intention of giving any of it back. The next call I made was to Brooke. She picked up immediately. "I just called the venue," I said. "They're refusing to refund the deposit." "I know," she said, her tone smug and careless. "Contracts are a pain, aren't they?" "You knew," I said slowly. "You knew they wouldn't refund it because it's your uncle's company. You should have thought about that before you threw away our future over nothing," she snapped and hung up. That was it. The game was on. She wasn't just leaving, she was making sure it cost me. The next battleground was our social circle. Brooke launched a smear campaign that was both vicious and effective. She told everyone that I had a weird, unhealthy attachment to my mother, that my mom was a controlling woman who had never liked her, and that I'd ended the engagement in some explosive rage because Brooke had stood up for herself. And people believed her. A lot of them. Most of our friends had known her as the confident, charming one, while I'd always been quiet, reserved. She was more believable. I started getting texts from people telling me to apologize, that I'd made a mistake, that my best friend, Dave, was one of the few who actually called. "She's telling everyone you're a mama's boy who freaked out on her." He said that I told him what she'd really said about my mom's accent, the insult at dinner. He went silent for a few seconds, then finally said, "Wow, that's low. My grandparents have accents. That's messed up." But most people didn't see it that way. They saw the version Brooke painted. The poor, heartbroken woman abandoned by her unstable, overly attached ex. Then came the final straw. Her father called me. Robert, a corporate lawyer who managed to sound condescending even when he pretended to be polite. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. He spoke to me like I was a disobedient child. "Brooke is devastated," he said. "Frankly, my wife and I are deeply concerned. This impulsive behavior, this hostility, is not the man we thought our daughter was going to marry. We've invested a lot in this wedding, emotionally and financially. We expect you to make this right." "Make it right? How?" I asked. "Apologize to Brooke. Go to counseling. We can still get the wedding back on track," he said smoothly. "And of course, we expect you to cover the expenses for the dress and invitations we've already ordered." I actually laughed. "You expect me to pay for a wedding dress for a woman who mocked my mother in her own home, and who's trying to steal 20 grand from me through her uncle's company?" His voice went cold. "I suggest you reconsider your position. You don't want to make an enemy of my family." Then he hung up. That was a threat. And I was done being the quiet, reasonable one that I spent the next week planning. I knew I couldn't beat them in a she said. I needed proof. I needed leverage. And I knew exactly where to find it. Brooke, a younger sister, Chloe. She was the family's black sheep, an artist, a free spirit. She had always kept her distance from the snobbery and materialism that defined the rest of them. We'd always gotten along. I figured if anyone would tell me the truth, it would be her. I asked her to meet me for coffee. When we sat down, I told her everything: the dinner, the insult, the breakup, the venue scam, the smear campaign, even the phone call from her father. She listened quietly, shaking her head the whole time. "I'm not surprised," she said when I finished. "Brooke's always been like that. She's a user. My parents taught her to be one. They see people as assets. You were a good, stable asset, until you weren't." Then she told me something that changed everything. The art gallery Brooke worked at, the one she was always bragging about, was in serious financial trouble. The owner, an old family friend, was quietly looking for a buyer. In Brooke's plan, the one she had confided in Chloe, was to use our wedding money, the gifts from guests, and the startup fund she expected from my parents to buy into the gallery as a partner. Her entire future depended on the wedding going through. The $20,000 deposit she'd tried to steal wasn't just spite. It was seed money for her next chapter. A chapter that didn't include me. Just my money. She's telling everyone at the gallery that the wedding's still on, Chloe said. She's already negotiating her partnership deal, acting like the cash is guaranteed. That was all I needed. I finally had leverage. The next day, I had my lawyer draft a letter addressed to the gallery owner. It was brief and to the point that IT stated that I, as the primary financier of the wedding, had canceled the event. That there would be no wedding gifts, no startup fund, and no financial support from my family. And that any business deals made with Brooke based on those expectations were acts of fraudulent misrepresentation. My lawyer added one more note, that I was aware of the gallery's financial issues, and that I was personally exploring new investment opportunities in the local art scene, that I didn't send the letter. Not yet. First, I called Brooke. We need to talk, I said. About the $20,000. Brooke sounded smug. There's nothing to talk about. It's non-refundable. Here's my offer, I said. You tell your uncle to refund my deposit in full by the end of the week. In exchange, I won't send the letter I've written to your boss at the gallery, explaining that the wedding is off and that the money you promised him doesn't exist. The silence on the other end of the line was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. You wouldn't, she whispered. You insulted my mother in her own home, I said. You tried to steal 20 grand from me. Your dad threatened me. Your friends dragged my name through the mud. You've completely misunderstood the kind of man I am. Try me. Then I hung up. 2 days later, the full $20,000 was wired back into my account. The story could have ended there. But it didn't. Brooke's father, Robert, wasn't the kind of man who liked to lose. A week later, I was served with a lawsuit, a ridiculous claim for emotional distress and breach of promise to marry. It was a stunt, an attempt to intimidate me and bury me in legal fees. My lawyer, a sharp guy who'd been through a brutal divorce himself, just grinned when he saw the papers. This is a gift, he said. They just opened the door for us to countersue. And we're not just going for legal fees. We're going for damages. The next 6 months were a grinding, exhausting legal battle. Robert's strategy was to delay everything, file motion after motion, trying to bleed me dry. It was expensive and stressful, but I refused to give in. Somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, something unexpected happened. Chloe, Brooke's younger sister, who had been disowned for even speaking to me, became a real friend. We'd meet for coffee once a week, just to check in. She'd tell me the latest updates from inside her family's meltdown, and I'd vent about the latest round of legal nonsense. She became my anchor, my reminder that not everyone in that family was rotten. Eventually, my lawyer decided it was time to play hardball. We filed a motion to depose Brooke's uncle, Richard, the venue owner. We wanted him under oath to answer questions about his company's refund policies and whether he personally benefited from keeping my deposit. The day before that deposition, my lawyer got a call. It was Robert. He wanted to talk settlement. We met in a sterile conference room at a neutral law office. It was me, my lawyer, Brooke, and her father. Brooke wouldn't look at me. Robert did all the talking. He offered to drop the lawsuit if I signed a non-disclosure agreement and agreed to walk away. Quietly, my lawyer just laughed. Here's our offer, he said. You'll drop your frivolous lawsuit. You'll pay my client's legal fees, which currently stand at just over $30,000. And your daughter will write a formal, handwritten apology letter to my client's mother for the disrespectful, hurtful comments she made. Robert's face turned purple. That's outrageous. Is it? My lawyer said calmly. Because our next step is to depose your brother-in-law about his business practices. Then we'll depose every one of Brooke's friends who helped spread lies about my client. We'll ask them under oath what Brooke told them and when. We'll make this the most public, embarrassing breakup this city has ever seen. Or, he said, leaning back, you can pay the fees, she can write a one-page letter, and we can all move on.